April 1945. Königsberg is burning. Artillery walks across the old town, and inside the castle, the great halls are roaring, timber ceilings folding inward in sheets of fire. Somewhere, beneath that collapsing roof, stand crates of fossil resin worth more than the building around them. When the smoke clears, the greatest missing artwork of the 20th century is simply gone. To understand what was lost, go back 2.5 centuries to the cold, gray coast of the Baltic. Here the sea gives up a strange harvest. After winter storms, the tide line glitters with small golden stones, light enough to float in salt water, warm to the touch. Fishermen gathered them in nets by lantern light. Amber is not stone. It is resin, bled from pine forests that stood on this coast some 40 million years ago. Buried, compressed, and turned to gold. Insects died inside it and are still there, perfect, mid-flight. Held to a candle, it does not merely shine. It seems to hold light inside itself and give it back slowly. Around 1701, the first king in Prussia decided to build a room out of it. The design is credited to the court architect Andreas Schluter, the craftsmanship to Baltic amber masters. Thousands of pieces were cut, matched for color, and fitted like marquetry into panels. Nothing like it had ever been attempted. Amber was jeweler's material. They were using it as wallpaper. In 1716, the panels changed hands. Friedrich Wilhelm I, a soldier king with little patience for ornament, gave the amber chamber to Tsar Peter the Great, sealing an alliance against Sweden. It traveled east by cart and by ship, crated to St. Petersburg, a gift between empires. It would never leave Russia by consent again. Decades later, the Empress Elizabeth moved it to the Catherine Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, outside the capital. The architect Bartolomeo Rastrelli enlarged it to fit a far grander hall, filling the gaps with gilded carving, mirrored pilasters, and 4 Florentine stone mosaics. More amber was shipped from Prussia. The chamber grew to cover some 55 square meters of wall. By candlelight, the effect was overwhelming. 6 tons of amber in every shade from milk to burnt honey, doubled and redoubled in mirrors, hundreds of candles multiplying into a hive of light. Visitors reached for religious words. Someone called it the 8th wonder of the world, and the name stuck for 200 years. It was also fragile. Amber is soft, and it dries. Panels cracked, pieces lifted and fell away, and generations of restorers were employed simply to keep the room from shedding itself onto the floor. By the 1930s, the curators knew the truth. The amber room could be admired. It could not safely be moved. On the 22nd of June, 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. Army Group North drove for Leningrad. Within weeks, the front was closing on the imperial palaces of Tsarskoye Selo, and the museum staff were counting hours. They packed paintings, furniture, porcelain, and sent trainloads east into the interior. The amber defeated them. When curators tried to lift the panels, the brittle mosaic began to crumble in their hands. So they improvised. They papered the walls over with gauze and wallpaper, and hoped an invading army would walk past a shabby room and never look twice. It was a desperate, almost childlike trick. In September 1941, German troops occupied the town. The palaces were stripped methodically. Floors, doors, statuary, whole libraries. Soldiers stabled horses in staterooms, and in one chamber, someone pulled at the wallpaper and found gold underneath. What followed was fast and professional. Under officers attached to the Army's art protection apparatus, the panels were prized from the walls and packed. Accounts say the work took about 36 hours and filled 27 crates. The room that could not be moved had been moved by men who did not care whether it survived the journey. The crates went west by rail to Königsberg, capital of East Prussia, the ancient amber city itself. There was a grim logic to it. The material had come from this coast. Now the room made from it was coming home as plunder. It was received by Alfred Rode, director of the city's art collections and a genuine amber scholar. This was the object of his life study, delivered to his door by an invading army. He unpacked it, reassembled what he could inside Königsberg Castle, and by 1942, parts of it were on public display. For 2 years, the amber room glowed again in a Prussian fortress, a trophy for visiting officials and a scholar's private obsession. Rode photographed it, wrote about it, guided visitors through it. He seems to have loved it. That love would make him, later, the most important witness of all. Then the war turned. In August 1944, British bombers struck Königsberg twice in a matter of days. The old town burned. The castle was gutted by fire, though its thick walls stood. Rode reported that the amber panels had come through and had been taken down and packed away again. Where they were packed to, nobody agrees. Cellars beneath the castle, a vaulted restaurant in its north wing, a crate train that may or may not have left the city. Every account we have comes from men who had reasons to lie or who did not live long enough to be asked twice. By January 1945, East Prussia was collapsing. 2 million civilians fled west across frozen ground toward the Baltic ports, and ships crammed with refugees put to sea under Soviet submarines. Loot went out on those ships too. Some of it went to the bottom with them. Königsberg itself was surrounded and declared a fortress. The final assault came in early April 1945. 4 days of bombardment and street fighting reduced the medieval core to broken teeth, and on the 9th of April, the garrison surrendered. The castle burned again, and this time, nothing was saved from it. Soviet investigators arrived within weeks. Among them, Anatoly Kuchermov, the young curator who had sailed to save the room in 1941. He dug through the castle's burnt cellars, looking for the one thing that would settle it: charred amber. He found scorched fragments and fittings, and no proof that satisfied anyone. Rode stayed in the ruined city and was questioned by the Soviets. He gave answers that led nowhere. In December 1945, he and his wife died within days of each other, reportedly of typhus. The doctor who signed the paperwork could not afterwards be located. The one man who had touched every panel was beyond further questions. Erich Koch, the Nazi ruler of East Prussia, survived the war and was tried and sentenced in Poland. For decades afterwards, he was visited by investigators hoping for the location. He hinted, he bargained. He died in prison in 1986, an old man, having told them nothing that could be dug up. So the hunting began, and it never really stopped. Soviet and East German teams sank shafts into salt mines. Divers went into flooded bunkers. Searchers pulled apart a wartime command complex in the Masurian forests, chased tunnels beneath Saxon hills, and drilled into caves on rumor and dowsing rods alike. The simplest explanation was always the hardest to accept. Amber burns. It burns easily with a sweet resinous smoke. If the crates were still inside Königsberg Castle in April 1945, the eighth wonder of the world did not vanish at all. It went up as smoke over a dying city, and everyone downwind smelled pine. Others put it underwater. Refugee ships left the East Prussian coast heavily loaded, and many were sunk. In 2020, Polish divers located the wreck of a small German steamer off the Baltic coast, its holds packed with crates, and for a few days, the world held its breath. What came up was cargo, not amber. The search took a toll on the people who gave their lives to it. The best known is Georg Stein, a German researcher who spent decades chasing looted art across Europe. In 1987, he was found dead in a Bavarian forest. His death was ruled a suicide. To the rumor mill, it became something else entirely. There is no curse. There is a pattern, which is worse. Anyone who genuinely knew where the crates went, was a soldier, an official, or a scholar, caught inside the collapse of a regime. And the collapse killed almost everyone who might have told us. The knowledge did not disappear. It was simply outlived. Then, in 1997, one piece surfaced. German police investigating a private sale recovered a Florentine stone mosaic, one of the 4 that had hung in the amber room, held by the family of a soldier who had served in the East. An amber chest from the same chamber turned up as well. Both were returned to Russia. That mosaic changed the question. Something did leave the castle before the fire, carried out by an ordinary man who put it in a cupboard and said nothing for 50 years. If one panel walked out in a rucksack, others may be in attics and cellars right now, unrecognized, wrapped in blankets, waiting for somebody to die. Russia stopped waiting. Beginning in 1979, craftsmen at Tsarskoye Selo set out to rebuild the room from photographs and a single-color image, relearning techniques that had died with their inventors. It took more than 20 years and a German industrial donation to finish. In 2003, it opened again, in the same hall on the palace's original walls. Stand in that hall now, and the light is right, the mirrors are right, the honey and cognac and milk of the amber are all right. It is faithful, and it is not the same thing. Somewhere between a Russian palace and a burning Prussian castle, 27 crates entered the dark. 80 years later, we still do not know whether we are looking for something or mourning it.